Before we start, I have to say I'm very impressed, Perry and Robin. Mazal Tov, and you're here. Very impressed. Did you not go to sleep or anything?
I did.
Very good. Okay. Mazal Tov to you.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to mute everybody. If you have something to say, obviously feel free to take yourselves off of mute. Okay. We are going to pick it up on page 20, which is near the end of Perek Gimel, chapter 3. And it starts with the words of the paragraph, Ken hadavar hazeh. Now, what we mentioned last time when we were finishing up was that we in this world, when we're lost, when we're not exactly sure what we should be doing, it's this equivalent of being in one of these mazes that they built with trees and shrubs that you can't see, and your goal is to get to the center or to get out. And one of the best ways that you can accomplish that, instead of trial and error, would be somebody who's been through the maze, who then can instruct you or sit up high, sit above you and look up down and say, no, don't go here, go there. And we said that was the mashal that was given. And someone also mentioned, I asked, like, what would be one of the best ways to get out of there? And you said using Waze. And that's the same idea, because Waze already knows, so to speak, through its GPS system and everything else built into it, that how to instruct you how to get out. So now we're going to pick it up at that second to last paragraph of the chapter. It says, Ken hadavar hazeh. So too, in this situation, mi she'adayin lo mashal biyitzro, a person who is yet to have shlita or control over his yetzer hara, who betoch hashvilim, he's still considered like in that path or those paths of this maze. Lo yuchal lavchin beinehem, and he can't tell the difference between them. Achamoshlim biyitzram, but those who have been able to overcome their yetzer hara, shekvar higiu al achsadra, who already got into the hall, or to the great hall, to the goal, shekvar yatzu min hashvilim, they've already come out of those paths. And they've been able to see very clearly with their own eyes the way to get out of this maze. They are the ones who are able to give advice and counsel to those who want to hear. And them we have to believe. Now, before I continue, I'll make a comment. You notice he says, they are the ones who can give us counsel to those who want to hear. Now, I don't know if anyone is here was in my Kuzari class last night, which is actually winding down to the last 3 or 4 classes. I mentioned a famous comment of the Kutzker Rebbe. He said, what does it mean in Shema when we say that these words should be al levavecha, that these words should be on your heart, when in fact we really should be saying bi levavecha, in your heart. So why does it say on your heart? The Kutzker Rebbe said, look, not everyone at his or her point in life is ready to hear everything the Torah has to say. But if the words are said, they will sit on the heart. And when a person's heart opens, as it were, the words will come into them. So here, in a different perspective, the Mesillat Yesharim, the Ramchal, is saying that the person who's going to give the Eitzah will be good for the one who wants to hear. And I would add to that, based on Rabbi Yehuda Levi, that even when someone doesn't want to hear it, as Rabbi Yehuda Levi mentions in Kuzari, it still is choder. It penetrates the neshama, and it's there somewhere to come out at some point. And we have to listen to these people, we have to believe in these people who have been through the ringer, who've seen the other side, who understand what it means to overcome the yetzer hara, at least in that area, and can give direction. V'omnam, mahi ha'etzah she'em notnin lanu. So, Begadol, what is the eitzah? What is the recommendation, the advice they can give us? It goes back to the pasuk they quoted at the beginning of this chapter, bo'u cheshbon, which in the Torah does not mean what we're about to say, but rather it's an allegory. What does it mean, bo'u cheshbon? That they come with the cheshbon, with the accounting. Bo'u nechashev cheshbono shel olam. Let us come together and determine and figure out the cheshbon, or the accounting of this world. Ki kvarem nisu v'ra'u v'yadu, because these other people have already tried, they've seen, and they know. They know that it is the only true path. To really arrive at the best possible result that you desire, and nothing else. What does this mean? So he's going to, instead of using my words, let me read the last paragraph here, and I'll expand a little bit. The general rule is as follows. צריך האדם להיות מתבונן בשכלו תמיד, בכל זמן, ובזמן קבוע לו בהתבודדו. That a person needs to set aside time, both in a perpetual way, but also in a very specific time, to spend time in thought, in sitting with, there's two concepts, hitbonenut, contemplation, and hitbodedut, which doesn't mean being lonely, means being alone time, thought. What is the true path in life? If I were to ask you, forget this book, forget everything else, you know Torah, you know the 613 mitzvot. If I ask you, as he said at the very beginning of this book, what is it a Jew is supposed to do? You know, it's not something you don't know. You know, you're supposed to do the mitzvot aseh. You're supposed to stay away from the mitzvot lo ta'aseh, and to do your best at every single thing. So there's nothing new here. So what is the hitbonenut? What is the hitbodedut? What is this contemplation? What is this spending time by yourself thinking? Then you have to say, okay, I know category A is everything I'm supposed to do. Now category B is, let's look at what I've been doing and how does it add up? If they fall, if they're correct, if they're matching up to what we're supposed to do. Because through this, he'll easily be able to purify himself from anything bad, and to straighten out any one of his paths. You should make plain the path of your feet in all the ways you will establish. Let us investigate our ways. Let's check them out. Let's investigate and return to God. So what does that mean, this last piece? What is this last section telling us? The last section is reiterating one thing and adding something. We all know the difference between right and wrong. We all know we don't eat treif. We all know we don't work on Shabbat. We all know we light Hanukkah lights. All these things we know. Great, shkoyach, very nice. But do we do everything the right way? Definitely not. There's not a single person who does everything the right way, because there's no such thing as someone who's perfect. There's no concept of someone who doesn't do some avera. Some are machmir in doing extra averas because they want to make sure the pasuk is true. But bigadol, it is what it is. But how do you know? You have to take stock. You have to stop and think, I know what I'm supposed to do. Am I doing it? I very often compare this step, this idea, to a job interview, a job review or performance review. For some of you, you know that I may have mentioned this, that before I was rabbi of a shul, I spent about 20 years. No, that's not true. 15 years. 19 years, whatever, it's a lot of years, 18 years in the business world. I worked for the most part for two companies in purchasing. I became purchasing director for one company, and I moved to another company after they downsized to another company as director of purchasing there. And either I worked for somebody, obviously I had someone who was above me on the organizational chart, or people who worked for me. So just like I had to give a performance review to those who worked for me in shipping and receiving, for example, so I had to answer to my manager. I had a performance review. The funny thing, in quotes, when I was teaching, when I started to teach, besides being Rabbi Vishal, I also was teaching in high school and in elementary school. So the principal of the school happened to be a very close friend of mine. I mean, very close. We're probably like a best friend kind of situation. But he was still the principal of the school where I was the teacher. So when it came time for my performance review, he was the principal, I was the teacher. You have to be able to compartmentalize these things. But what's the purpose of the performance review? It's not to say you did this bad, you did this bad. It said, look, hey, let's see what you're supposed to do. Let's see what you are doing. What you're doing well, we're going to give you chizuki to continue with. And that what you're not doing so well, you need to fix. And that's what this is. This is a I don't say inflicted, a self-imposed Performance review. Are you doing what you're supposed to do? Give you some examples. Let's assume a person works a 9-to-5 job, punches a clock. He works in a factory. Instead of coming in at 9 o'clock, he comes in at 9:40, and he doesn't punch his clock right away. He goes and he has coffee, takes a bathroom break, goes out, and he has a smoke and calls his girlfriend. And then he comes in and he starts to work, and he doesn't do exactly what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to pull the lever down. He plays around with it. He maybe puts a little bit of stuff on it. He doesn't do his job right. And at lunchtime, and after a few days of this, the boss comes to him and fires him. So what did I do wrong? What are you talking about? I come here. He says, yeah, you come in late. You don't do your job. We would never accept an employee doing something that doesn't follow, for the most part, the guidelines of the job description. And if the guy's coming in late and wasting time, taking time from the company time, taking home the pencils and pens, because, hey, the company has millions of them, what's the big deal? We would never accept that. Yet when it comes to our relationship and our actions vis-a-vis Hashem, where are we holding with that? Where do we do? Do we come in late for things? Do we take the pens and pencils home from the teacher, so to speak? Again, speaking allegorically, this is what he's talking about in this chapter, is this Ba'u Cheshbon, taking self-stock. It does not mean we do this in Elul. Doesn't mean we only do this in Tishrei. We do this in Shvat, we do it in Cheshvan, we can do it in Nisan. Doesn't make a difference because it's supposed to be kavua. Now, the second chapter was called Be'ur Midata Zehirut, or the explanation of what is, or translation, what is Zehirut? What is watchfulness? What does it mean to be vigilant? The second chapter, which is really Parag Gimel, is Chalkei Zehirut, which we saw were we broke down into manageable parts. What is Zehirut? It's very nice, but there's one big piece missing, and this is how he sets up this whole book. There are two big pieces missing. The first big piece missing is how. We know the what. We know what Zehirut is. At least we have a general idea now. It's the sur meira. It's not doing the things we're not supposed to do. How do we do it? That's first. So the next chapter is going to be about how we do this. Now, before we do that, I'm going to read 3 lines from Rav Aviner's book on Mesillat Yesharim. At this point, let me ask you a question. At this point, having spent now a few classes on this topic, would you say that you know what to do with this midah? That's a rhetorical question. Chances are you'll say you have some general idea. You just said, Bo Cheshbon, let's contemplate, let's do. Yes. But knowledge is not the same thing as really having a complete handle on something. Listen to what he says. Just because you know something doesn't mean you've acquired that. In this world, you need to schwitz, you need to work at it. In order to acquire emtsaim. It's a word I never remember in English. Means. Yeah. Means by which to acquire something. I'm going to explain this in a minute. It's not enough to know the value or to understand the value and importance of the land of Israel. It's not enough just to recognize the value of Torah. Now, as I say, I think that Torah, as we say, it's axiomatic to say that Torah is our map of life, right? It's our guidebook for life. No, it doesn't work that way. I can understand that Torah is the most important thing in the world. It doesn't make me a Talmid Chacham. Drosh kinyan, seek out acquisition. Again, I'll explain this. Drushim emtzayim liknot et tachlit. We need means with which to acquire the end result. What does this mean? Okay, so I'm going to use a phrase from Pirkei Avot that you all know, and maybe have misunderstood over the years to understand what this chapter is about. And then every subsequent chapter that begins with b'derech kiniyat something, the way to acquire something, means this has the same background. It says, "Aseh lecha rav," make for yourself a rav, uknei lecha chaver. Now, if you look in English translations, sometimes you see it says acquire a friend. Some actually say buy a friend. It's like, hey, here's $5. Could you be my friend? what does it mean? Aseh lecha Rav, I understand. Okay, it means that we have a family doctor, we have a family dentist, we have a family accountant, we have a family lawyer. What does it mean to have a Rav? What does that mean? So it means that I know I don't know everything about medicine. I know I don't know everything about law. I know I don't know everything about my teeth. I need someone who has the training and the expertise in the area to consult with, or sometimes to help fix me what I need when I need fixing. We need to understand that nobody, and I mean nobody, has a complete handle on all of Torah. Maybe the few Yechidim on planet Earth, but everyone has questions. Everyone has, whether halachic questions, philosophical questions, everyone has issues. And if you never ask a question to a Rav and you make all decisions yourself, it's like you treating yourself and taking your own appendix out, basically, when you think about it. But in the long, you're doing more harm to yourself because you're harming yourself spiritually. There are people who have the perspective in halacha, when in doubt, do without. I'm not sure if it's treif. I treifed up my sink, probably is, I'll kasher it. I don't know if she could go to the mikveh tonight or not. The next night, because of X, Y, and Z, let's just put it off a night. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible approach to halacha. Always ask questions. Always want to know more. But just knowing that there's a question is a step already. But what is Kanei Lecha Chaver? So one opinion is you buy books. It means Sfarim, you have to become educated. But what does the word kinyan mean? So if I've used this expression before, this example, if I walk into Mickey's Makolet, and I walk in and I take a bag of chips and I walk out, that's called stealing. If before I walk out, I take 5 shekel and I put it in front of Mickey, and now I walk out, that's called purchasing. What's the difference? I did almost the exact same thing. I took a bag of chips and I walked out of the building. What happened in between? I did an action that then made that bag of chips mine. I have what they say in English, I've acquired it. It's an acquisition. Acquisition being as simple as a bag of chips or a $55 million business. It could be anything in between, but that's an acquisition. The difference between, so let's say, for example, I'm walking around the store and I have the chips in my hand. I didn't walk out yet. And you come along, you grab it from me. Can I say you stole it from me? No, I haven't acquired it yet. I haven't done any active acquisition. Well, I picked it up. If I'm walking out in the street and there's a ball that has no label, no name, no anything, it's absolutely generic, and there's no way someone can identify it, I'm allowed to keep it. How do I acquire it? I pick it up. I don't pay anybody. So that becomes mine. So if I'm in the store and I picked up the bag of chips, why isn't that mine? Because the way the world works when it comes to acquisition of stuff that is being sold is you have to do an active acquisition, such as pay for it. If the owner says, by taking this bag and walking out of the store, you now are acquiring it, basically he's done is giving it to you for free. And then again, there had to be some form of acquisition. But my picking it up in the store doesn't make it mine. I have to pay for it. There's an actual physical action, and that's paying. That's called kinyan. Acquiring a friend doesn't mean just making good friends. It means having someone close enough that you feel that they are a part of you, that you are someone that they are someone you can confide in, somebody you can talk to, somebody you can ask questions to acquire it. An acquisition is this pencil, for example, became mine when I bought it. It's now mine. Doesn't mean that I now control my friend. Chas v'shalom. If that's how you look at life, you really need to see somebody's dachuf. But it means that you have a special connection to that individual. It's a much closer connection than seeing a pen on someone's table or pencil versus you bought it and now it's yours. Same thing. I can see a person walking down the street whom I know plenty of people, and I can see somebody, and that person means, I won't say nothing to me, but it's a neighbor, it's a friend, someone down the street, how you doing kind of person. But to their next door neighbor, that individual might be the most close person to them they have on planet Earth and means the world to them. That's acquiring. So let's take a look. With that in mind, we can start chapter 4, Perek Daled, because again, we know the what. We know what is Zehirut. We now need to know the how. How do we do it? How do we acquire it? Hine, Perek Daled, derech kniyat hazehirut. That which will bring a person to that point in general of zehirut, again, vigilance, watchfulness, limud haTorah, learning Torah. If you remember the introduction to the book, the impetus for writing this book was a braita in the Gemara by Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, which had a list of this action brings to this. If you do this, it brings you to this level. You do this, or it all starts off with HaTorah mevi'ah lidei zehirut. Torah brings you to a level of vigilance. What does that mean? What does that mean? On the most simple level, if you don't know something's wrong to do, you're going to do it. If I don't know it is asur to eat tevel, tevel is a produce that grows in Israel. You didn't take Trumot and Masrot, and I mentioned, I think here before, that if you have a choice between eating tevel and a ham sandwich on Yom Kippur, or at least eating a ham sandwich, eat the ham sandwich. But I don't know if tevel is prohibited. If I don't know that, how am I going to be watchful? How am I going to be vigilant? Oh, be careful not to eat tevel. What's tevel? I don't know. Well, it's produce that didn't take Trumot and Masrot yet. I can't do that. So that's the basic most simplistic level. He's going to get it more deeper though. Omnam al derech prat hamevid hazeh, on a more specific way that brings you to this. Uhi ha'itbonenut al chomer ha'avoda asher chayav ba'adam ve'omek hadin aleha. Free translation: know halacha, learn Torah, learn halacha, know what you need to do. ויצא לו מזה מן העיון במעשים הכתובים בספרי הקודש ומן הלימוד במאמרי החכמים זיכרונם לברכה המעוררים על זה. But it's not enough just to know halacha. Not enough. We also have to know way beyond halacha. What's he talking about? We have to learn sifrei kodesh, ma'amarei chachamim. What is he talking about here? Are you allowed to be verbally abusive to somebody? The answer, of course, is no. Lo tonu ish et achiv. You're not allowed to abuse in any way, verbally, physically. You can't abuse anybody. However, when we look at certain narratives in the Torah, can we speak lashon hara? No, we know we can't speak lashon. Lo telech achil bi'amecha. Are you allowed to? There are a lot of things that can ask you like that. You know you can't because halacha, but it goes way beyond just what it says as far as halacha. We take a look at the narrative between Yaakov Avinu and Rachel. Rachel says, Hava li banim, not Hava. Hava li banim, v'im ayin meta anochi. Give me children, or otherwise I will be like I'm dead. Yaakov gets very angry. What am I in place of God? He's all upset with her. How could you talk like this? I'm not God. We know that Sarai Imenu was not very nice to Hagar. And not only that, the Malach even said to Hagar the first time she's out, go back and become and be, not really, I don't want to translate be abused by Sarah. It's not nice to say, but go back to that situation because there's other stuff coming down the road. When besides learn halacha, we have to see that first of all, our avot and imahot were not perfect, and we can learn from their mistakes because they made mistakes. And why did I said this before? Why do we call Moshe Rabbeinu? Because we learn absolutely everything from Moshe Rabbeinu. We learn how to act. It's not enough to just know black and white halacha. We also have to know when it applies and when we can push something aside, and when we can divert, and when we can change. And we have to have this level of knowledge in order to be careful. If someone says to me, I'll give you a great example. Someone called me, messaged me yesterday and said, I never thought about this before. I went to my bank and I just want to get a statement of my accounting. He said, I'm old fashioned, I like paper. And I see, I have savings there and I get interest. How is that okay? Is Jews paying me interest? So I explained the concept. It's called heter iska, which I'm not going to get into now, and also when it's a business, not a private individual. I said, go back to the bank, take a look on the wall. You'll see that there's this idea there. That wasn't exactly how the question was posed to me, but I'm trying to couch it a little bit differently. But the fact that he understood that there was an issue, potential issue, because he had the knowledge that there was this concept of repeat, opened his eyes to, wait a minute, that's vigilance. That's kinyan zehirut. You're acquiring it. You're taking the knowledge you have and applying it. V'hinei, next paragraph. Behitmonanut hazeh he'arot behadraga. Actually, before I continue, I want to make a comment about something. if you take a look at the Rambam who wrote, when we say the Rambam, we say, look at the Rambam, we're talking about the Yad HaChazakah, the Mishneh Torah, his famous magnum opus of halacha, first codification of halacha ever in history, because Mishnah is not codification of halacha. He has 14 volumes, Yud Daled 14. I just recently learned because he was born on Yud Daled Nisan, and he was, I don't want to use the word obsessed, but he tried to do things in 14. The first section, which talks about all kinds of amazing things, one of his sections is called Hilchot Deot. And Hilchot Deot is not about knowledge necessarily. It's about Torah, nothing. In order to be able to be careful, you have to have the knowledge. You have to have the da'at. And that's what he's saying about this as well. What I want to do before I continue, I don't know if I'm going to continue the text or not. I want to read you two things today, because this is going to be the last class we have before Rosh Hashanah. There are two things I want to share with you. And one of them is very much connected to Elul. Both of them are, and Rosh Hashanah, and hopefully give you a little pause for thought. The first one is something I wrote a couple days ago. Let me do a screen share. Nope, that's not what I want to share. Let's try again. Screen share. Here should be this. Share. There we go. Okay. It's called Nakva Ruchi. Okay, this is a piyut I wrote just literally a couple days ago. Just want to move down for a second and see. Okay. Nakva Ruchi bikirbi. My ruach, my spirit in me has dried up. V'avarti al me'ilah. And I have transgressed me'ilah. Me'ilah is when you use something that is kodesh, something holy, and use it for a profane purpose. Whoa. Why did it stop? Why did it go to there? Did it go away for you? No, you still see it? That's interesting. How about now? You see it still, yes? Good, because mine just went away. Okay, let me try again. My spirit inside of me has dried up. And I transgressed me'ilah. Zavadni Hashem matana. Hashem has bestowed upon me an amazing gift. Lehitaher bitvilah. To become purified through tvilah. It could be in a mikveh, it could be through recurring to God. B'chol in spite of the fact that I have this amazing gift from God to do tshuva, maradti, I've rebelled. B'chol yom, and every day, nefila, yet another falling down. Im b'mered, im b'ma'al, it's a quote from Yehoshua. Whether it was through rebelliousness or through using something the wrong way, ashuv elecha bitfilah, I will return to you through prayer. This is something I wrote because it is a feeling that I know I have, a lot of people have, is that, I try and I still mess up, and I still mess up. And that's okay. I mean, it's not okay to mess up, but it's okay to mess up and to realize you're messing up and you want to change and you want to grow. And that's what this chapter is about. These chapters right now are really about, is when you have not only a nefila, when you have a falling, when you've messed up, whether in a very great giant way or a very small way, knowing that you did, being aware of it, and then moving on beyond that. Now, that's the first thing I wanted to share with you. The second thing I want to share with you is as follows. Let me get to that. Is here. Okay. Now, let me move you over this so you don't read it just yet. There's a book I wrote. I've yet to publish. It's going to publish. It would have been probably this past May, but I'm going to push it to next May. It's called The Three Images. And without going into the whole background right now, because I don't want to tell you the whole story, just Bezrat Hashem, it's already done. It's been edited multiple times, and it needs to come out somewhere around May, June, because it's really meant for reading before the time of Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then eventually throughout the year. But it basically has 30 images in the book. It's called Three Images for a reason. It has 30 images, and each image has and they're all real stories or things I observed, and a lesson from it. So I'm going to read you this one image. The final image is the last one of this particular series of 3. The final image is a mix-up. The following article appeared in many newspapers in early June of 2006. It's a true story. Whitney Sirach and Laura Van Ryn looked remarkably alike, both attractive young women with blonde hair, similar facial features, and the same build and height. They were together the night of April 26th, returning from banquet preparations with a group from Taylor University, when a tractor trailer slammed into their university van, peeling off the side and killing 5 people. Sirach's family was told their 18-year-old was among the dead. Van Ryn's parents were told their 22-year-old daughter was alive, but seriously injured and in a coma. The Van Ryns kept vigil at the young woman's bedside for weeks, but as she regained consciousness, she began saying things that didn't make sense. This week, they made a stunning discovery. The recovering patient wasn't their daughter at all. She was Whitney Sirach. I still can't get over it. It's like a fairy tale, said Sirach's grandfather, Emil Frank. Van Ryn's parents, who had kept a daily weblog of the young woman's recovery after the crash, disclosed the mix-up on their blog. Quote, "Our hearts are aching as we have learned that the young woman we have been taking care of over the past 5 weeks has not been our dear Laura," the family wrote. Certainly there, those people are devastated today because the person, their friend who they thought had lots of hope and was progressing every day, they now found out she has died. There are also those who are rejoicing because Whitney is alive. This is now me speaking. I cannot begin to imagine what both families must have felt as the news of the true identities was discovered. Finding out that your loved one is alive instead of dead. Finding out that your loved one is dead rather than alive. How very painful it must have been. And the world shakes its collective head in disbelief and wonders how this could have happened. The truth is, this happens every day of our lives. Not to the same degree or publicity as this case, but it does happen countless times a day. Stop and think for a moment. For those few days, only Hashem knew the true identity of those 2 young women. Everyone else thought they knew who they were dealing with. Everyone thought they knew what was happening and what they were facing. Whoops. The truth is that this happens to us all the time. We're dealing with an individual in business. We're dealing with a friend. We're dealing with a family member, and they turn out to be someone completely different. We thought we could trust them. We thought they were a true friend. We thought they loved us, and we thought we knew who they were. And during this entire time, as we thought we were dealing with one person, it turned out to be a different person. All along, only Hashem knew the true identity of this individual. As devastating as these experiences must be, we must realize that we truly don't always know who the other person is. We must also recognize that relative to the rest of the world, each of you is the other person. Ask yourselves, if people really know the true you, 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And why is that? Because often we are afraid to show who we really are for fear of rejection, ridicule, or other myriad of reasons. While everyone sitting next to you does not know your true, real identity, Hashem does. If you do not know your own self, He does. And it is at this moment in time that each of us must stop and face that persona and deal with the real me. On Yom Kippur, there can be no hiding behind a mask. We call the Day of Atonement Yom HaKippurim, or as some say, a day like Purim, because we have a mask on. It is time to remove the mask and deal with who you are as you approach Hashem. And the reason I wanted to share that, not just because of the being close to Rosh Hashanah, but because of the idea of masks. I wrote this goes back to 2006 when I wrote this. And obviously way before the pandemic. And I was thinking that many times I'm walking out of the house and the first thing I'm about to say is, do I have my mask? Now, that is meant in the literal sense, and it's almost always in my back pocket. Do I have my mask? But at the same time, in an unconscious, or sorry, a subconscious way, many of us always think that. Do I have my mask on? Am I about ready to present myself to the world who I am? No, I got to keep that covered up. I need to, people can't really know the true me. What this parak, these prakim are about, is knowing the real you. The whole book is, but especially when it comes to Zehirut. Because when it comes down to it, many of the times, the only person who knows that you're being vigilant or not is yourself. And by doing so, by following the Torah and learning more Torah, learning the experiences, reading the narratives in Tanakh, and hearing the words of Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu, and Daniel, whoever you read, reading stories, Hasidic fables, Mishalim, whatever it is that gets you motivated to do the right thing and to think of now. Remember, I'm not saying just to doing the right thing is coming. That's Zvizut. That's the next few chapters. We're dealing with Zehirut. Zehirut, remember, is Sur Meira, staying away from the wrong things. Asay Tov, which is Zvizut, that's coming up afterwards. We'll deal with that down the road. So from the Sur Meira aspect, many times it's only we who know that, what we're doing right or wrong, and trying to be careful. Pretending to be ignorant about something in your mind may justify to you why you've done something wrong, but it's not an excuse. Imagine a cop pulls over someone who drove through a red light. The guy said, "Don't you know I just went through a red light?" He would say, "So what? You mean so what? You're not allowed to go through a red light." I didn't know that. How fast would it be before the cop's going to give a ticket? Obviously. Tov. Obviously, the next few weeks we are not going to be meeting because it's either Chag or Erev Chag or Erev, whatever it might be. We'll reconvene Bezrat Hashem right after Sukkot, at least as of this moment. We'll pick it up with where I left off. I'm going to mark it down. I want to take this opportunity to wish everyone a Shana Tova. It should be not only a good year, it should be a great year. It should be a year of briut, of health, that we should really, truly get back to not normal. Rav Matisyahu Solomon said that after 9/11, that everyone's saying it's time to get back to normal. He says, we don't move back to normal, we get forward to change. And we really need to forward to change because whatever's the reason this pandemic here in the world, we have no idea, we don't understand. Cheshbonot of Hashem, we need to move on. We need to grow from this. And we need to eradicate this Yamach Shemo of the pandemic, get back to life how we're supposed to live it, and be able to do the mitzvot we're supposed to do, because one of the things that's falling by the wayside, obviously, is Achnasat Orchim and all kinds of other, Bikur Cholim and all kinds of other issues. Hashem should shower you all with Shefa Brachot this year. Again, a Briut, Nachat, and Shalom. I wish you all a good day.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Huge.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yesher Koach.
Good health to everyone, please.
Amen.
Shana
Amen.
Tova.
Good health.
Amen.